Welcome guys, today is a very special day because as you saw by the title, we are installing a short shifter on the Mini. This will be my first ever short shifter kit and I'm really excited to feel the difference this is going to make. This will be a 20% reduction, so it's not going to be as dramatic as some cars which can be up to 50% reduction. This is the Madness Motorworks adapter, and what it does is it uses all of the factory hardware. It just extends the pivot point for the shift cable down a couple of inches, and what that does is it gives you more mechanical advantage over the cables, which means that you're going to have to remove the shifter ball a shorter distance to move the cable the same distance. To do a quick demonstration, imagine that where I am holding on to this screwdriver is the pivot point on our shifter. So the top of it is your shift knob, and this is first gear and this is second gear. So you're going to engage first, pull back on the shifter, and then to engage second gear, you're going to push through neutral and then back into second. So you're going to have to cover this distance right here. What the short shifter does is it moves the pivot point further up on the length. So you're going to have more length down here, which means I'm going to move this a shorter distance than before. So if your shifter is all the way down here, you have to move a big arc to get to the two gears. If you move up here and you have more shifter sticking out the below the pivot point, you don't have to move it as far to get between gears. So hopefully that demonstration made sense and made it a little bit more clear. But this Madness Motorworks one is nice because it's really cheap because you're reusing most of the factory hardware. I also like that it's really stealthy. I like the factory knob. If you've ever used an aftermarket shift knob that's aluminum or steel, it's going to get really hot when it's hot outside and really cold when it's cold. Where the factory piece, which is covered in leather, is a lot less sensitive to getting hot and cold as the weather changes. So as you can see, this is all we have to install. This is what the bottom of the factory shifter looks like. There's this little pivot ball down here, which is what the shift cables connect to, and this is going to slip over that one and extend the pivot point down further. So this is going to slide over that point, and there's three little set screws that are going to be tightened in. They have Loctite on the threads already, so you don't have to add your own. And then there's this piece of heat shrink tube which you're going to slip over, heat up, and that tightening around the outside is going to make sure that these never have any ability to back out. I've done a lot of research on this and I haven't found any case where anyone had an issue with it backing out, so I'm not worried about it. So most of the steps for this are going to be the same as installing an aftermarket one. It's just there's fewer steps because we don't have to access any from the top side. Everything is accessed from underneath the car. So here we have the factory setup. I am in fourth gear right now, and I'm going to push it all the way forward into third. So here's neutral and third. So all the way up in third gear. And back to fourth gear. So looking at it the best I can, it looks like all the way at the back, the center of the shift knob is at 8 3/4 inches, and all the way forward it is at 4.5 inches. So right at 4 1/4 inches travel from third gear all the way back to fourth. So we'll go under the car, get the shifter extension put on so that we can shorten up our throw, and we'll see just how much we take off that 4 1/4 inch throw. Based on the claimed 20% reduction, we should reduce it by almost a full inch. Alright, as you guys can see, I have the heat shield and the exhaust middle section removed, and this is our shifter box right here. So this is where all of our work's going to be done. I'm not going to be able to film too well under here. It's pretty cramped underneath the car. But what you're going to do is there are clips all around the perimeter of this little dust cover down here. You're going to pop those off. As you can see, there's not a whole lot of room, especially on the passenger side. So I'm going to come in from the driver's side, try to pry some of it out. Once that's removed, we'll pop the shifter cable off the bottom of the factory shifter ball. That'll allow us to put the extension on from Madness Motorworks. And with the new extension on, we will tighten down those locking screws, put on the heat shrink tubing, pop everything back, and then we will be ready to go test our new shorter throw. All right, not gonna lie you guys, it's actually really difficult to get this cover off, unfortunately, but actually to our favor, mine broke. The problem is with the extension on, this extends too far down to actually put the dust cover on, so at least we have the dust covers on this bottom half, and it'll be a lot easier to cover up whatever little extra opening we have left to keep any dust out of there. The heat shield for the exhaust will still cover it up pretty well, so I'm not overly concerned about it, but we'll see what the final product looks like and how much I'm going to have to either move some of this out of the way and make a little bit of a DIY cover to keep extra dust out of here. But we'll worry about that when we're done. Right now, what I'm going to focus on is getting this off of the shifter linkage. So you're just going to have to pull it straight down. It's on there pretty tight, so it might be pretty difficult to get off. So I'm going to go ahead and get some vice grips on here and just pull straight down. And then we'll be able to slide the Madness Motorworks extension onto this right here, which is your shift lever, and then pop this onto the new ball on the extension. Alright, so I was able to get it off. It wasn't too horrible. I just put some vice grips on here and then used a pry bar to pry off of this and pulled it straight down. It came off pretty easy with the leverage. You can see here how this, which is your stock shifter, looks almost exactly like the extension. So you're going to slide the extension over this right here, and it's going to be a nice tight fit. And then you're going to put in those little set screws, and they're going to set around this center section here. And then the ball, instead of being right here, will be about down here. And that extra extension is what's going to help us have a shorter shifter, because we'll have a longer lever below the pivot point. As you can see, this one has some grease on it, so I'm going to put some grease on the new one we'll be putting on, tighten all down the set screws, and then we're going to put on that heat shrink, and we'll be done. So here's the finished product. So we have our extension right here, and then we past that we have the factory shift lever. We've got the heat shrink on it, and it's nice and tightly covered. Of course, we have the Loctite on the threads already, so that's not a concern. New grease on the ball, so this is nice and smooth. I did have to remove the rest of the cover, so what I'm going to try to do is make up some sort of V-shaped cover for the extra depth, because this is now below the height of the ledge here. So I'm going to have to make up something to cover this up just so I don't get as much dust in here. Again, I'm not too worried about it, but I've got the extra time, so I might as well. It will likely be difficult to get this cover off. I had a lot of trouble with it, and mine was old and brittle, so as you can see, it came apart in pieces. But we weren't reusing it, so it's not that big of a deal. But let's get up top. I'm really excited to see how much shorter a throw this actually is. All right, so here we have the shifter in neutral, so we're going to go forward into third. And we're at the same spot, about 4.5 inches, but if we go all the way back, the center of the shifter stops just before 8 inches. So we took off over 3/4 of an inch of throw, which is right at the 20% claimed reduction. So our total throw is now just under 3.5 inches. And the nice thing is, all of the loss was back here, so it came further back before. It seems to go the same distance forward, but it comes not nearly as far back, which I'm definitely really happy about, because that way I'm not having to bring my arm quite as far back when I'm shifting from like 3rd to 4th on a track. So I think this is going to work out really well. For $80, this was definitely worth it. And I get to retain a stock look, so it looks stock. The interior still looks nice and stealth, which I like, especially on something that's a daily. I don't want it looking all sporty, but I'm really happy with how it feels. It feels very direct. It doesn't feel vague or anything like that, so it hasn't had any sort of negative effect on how the shifter feels. It's just a shorter throw. And of course I checked to make sure I could get into all 6 gears and reverse, and there was no issues there. I know that there are some that if it goes too short, you have difficulty getting into certain gears, so that's not an issue with this shifter. Of course we're going to take it for a drive, but overall I am extremely satisfied. It was very simple. Even with filming, it took me less than an hour. So now I'm going to get back under the car, get everything buttoned back up, try to come up with some sort of little dust cover to keep this protected, and then we'll take it on a drive. Before I button everything back up, I wanted to give you a shot of how much I was able to recover on the factory dust shield. So I was able to zip tie them back together, and then I cut out a section all the way down to here of the plastic, and then I covered as much as I could with this aluminum tape so that all of the shifter movement is right here, and then the shifter rod takes up some of the thickness of this plastic and the bracing, but the tape is so thin that I can at least cover this much up as well. So I might eventually come up with some sort of little dome to cover up the rest of this. It doesn't stick out very high, maybe only the thickness of my finger. But again, there's going to be all of the factory heat shielding is going to be covering all this up, so there's really not going to be a whole lot of room left for dust to get in there. Here we are on our first drive of the short shifter. So it is a 20% reduction in throw, and I can already tell you guys from the first shift getting the car out of a driveway, it felt amazing. I mean, it is such a small difference in actual change in how far of a shifter has to move. 20% isn't a huge difference. Some shifters make up to a 50% difference. but it just is such a huge change for how enjoyable it is to shift. I can't really put it into words. It's not something tangible like an increase in horsepower. It just feels so much better. It's a much more enjoyable experience to row through the gears, especially in and out of my neighborhood, because I have to go up and down in the gears a lot as I come to stop signs. It really does make a difference. It's a lot more enjoyable, and I really think this is a great way to spend your time and your money, because you are touching your shifter every single time you get in your car, no matter what you do, driving fast or slow or highway or in the city. It doesn't matter. You're going to touch your shifter every single time you get in your car, and you're going to use it dozens of times per trip. It's really a great place to put your time and your money, especially with something as cheap as this short shifter is. Using all of the factory hardware, you don't have to take all of this stuff out and add in a shift knob that's uncomfortable or going to get hot or cold with the weather. It's just a very simple, adding that little extra extension to the bottom of it. It's only about $80. It is a great investment in the enjoyment you're going to have driving your car, and I cannot wait to use it on track and to use it in an autocross scenario or even just a mountain road. I'm really excited for that. If you guys are looking for a short shift kit for your R53 Mini, I would highly recommend this one from Madness Motorworks. It's a great shifter. It retains all the stock appearance and the nice leather shift knob that comes factory. It was super easy to install, and it's one of the cheapest ones on the market, if not the cheapest. So I can't recommend it enough. If you guys have any questions or comments, of course, drop those below. Hit that subscribe button, and I will see you guys next week.